Hello and welcome back to Silica Valley. My name is Andy Wilson. Today I was going to make a video about my favourite cocktail, a dry martini, and I will get to that. But while I was getting things ready, I realised that I have a lot of gin, 16 bottles to be precise. The gin's had a big renaissance in recent years and we've bought a fair bit of it over the last couple of years. But when you have your own bar, do you really need that many bottles of gin? Does anybody need that many bottles of gin? Does anybody really want to drink Quince gin or a cheap Spanish one? Well, let's find out. I'm going to taste them all so you don't have to. And then, if I'm still standing up, then I'll make my martini. Now, gin has a checkered reputation here in the UK. In the 1700s in London, of the 15,000 drinking establishments, half of them were gin shops. Why is that? Well, it's because it was deregulated by the government of the day, which gave way to cheaper ingredients and cheaper methods of distillation. The popularity of gin rose particularly among the poor, and even now it's referred to as mother's ruin. In the States, they talk about drunkards being gin-soaked and bars as gin joints. The British government eventually introduced some control measures with a piece of legislation called the Gin Act in 1736, which imposed high taxes on retailers, and this led literally to riots on the streets. The problem of gin was really bad. In fact, look at this engraving from 1750 by Hogarth, and you can see the problem. Now you might think, Andy, this is a cartoon version, and of course it is, but also Hogarth went to a lot of trouble to produce this image, so I'm guessing something was going on. Now, overseas in tropical British colonies back then, gin was popular for a different reason. There it was used to mask the flavour of quinine. This was the only effective ingredient at the time to provide protection from malaria. But quinine is very bitter, and gin, which was also a bit sweeter back then, was really good at its job. And have you guessed yet how the gin was mixed with quinine? Well, the quinine was added to carbonated water to make tonic water and then mixed with the gin, a gin and tonic. There is still quinine in tonic water these days, but only just enough to flavour it. Now, all gins begin the same with a base neutral ethanol spirit, but there are two different ways that this becomes flavoured. Less expensive gins simply add botanicals to the ethanol according to their own recipe, allow it to infuse and then filter and dilute it. According to my friend Cleo from the Hiltingbury Still, this method produces a straw-coloured liquid, but it's really not very common these days. A more expensive gin might take that same base spirit and redistill it with the botanicals. The redistillation makes it crystal clear. In all cases, a key flavouring is the humble juniper berry. So, we are going to get into it. You drink 16 gins and what do you get? I'm thinking a little gin soaked. Okay, so before we get started, I'll probably do these in batches of 4. Keep it simple to manage. I've got Bombay Sapphire, absolute classic. That's my go-to gin. I drink that all the time. Tanqueray, Gordon's extra dry or special dry, and this terrible looking one from Spain, which is made out of plastic. So I've chosen these 4 to start with because none of these are fruit flavoured. These should all be true to the juniper, really. They're all London gins of some kind. So we'll give them a try first. Let's begin with or should I drink the awful one? I'll drink the awful one first, actually. This is called Larios, which I'm sure means something profound in Spanish, but I've no idea what it is. Right, let's get this poured. I'm not going to have much of each one, obviously. Okay, even that's too much. So I'll pop that on there. Okay, let's have a taste. So this is Larios Mediterranean gin, double distilled apparently. Well, you can definitely smell the alcohol. I quite like drinking I quite like drinking straight spirits. I enjoy the sensation but I'm not particularly enjoying that sensation. I'm not even sure I could characterise what the taste of juniper is meant to be, but when I think about London gin, I don't really think it tastes like that. I mean, it'd be fine with a mixer. No, I'll resist. Okay, next let's try the Bombay Sapphire. Ooh. Let's see. Now that's got a much more pronounced smell. Instead of just smelling of alcohol, it smells of something else, botanicals, I assume. A very different drink, much less aggressive, still very strong, but much less aggressive. That's great. Okay, let's put that one up. What do they say about it? They say that it's the tantalising, smooth and complex taste that you experience when you sip Bombay Sapphire gin is described as fresh citrus and juniper flavours combined with an elegant, light, spicy finish. Well, I probably wouldn't have written that, but there's definitely a flavour to it. It's lovely. It's still very strong. I quite like drinking straight vodka, and gin seems much more aggressive than vodka. Okay, now we're going to go on to the Tanqueray. Another classic London gin, I think. Yes, it is. Okay. So that has a slightly different smell to the Bombay Sapphire. It's a bit more fruity, actually. It smells a bit more fruity. Wow. See, that for me, that's a lot more. That tastes a lot more spicy. If the Bombay Sapphire was the orange skin, this would be the zest of the orange. Very nice actually. That's a nice sipping drink. That I like that. Again, it's strong, so you have to sip them. You have to really delicately sip them rather than gulp them down. And now the Gordon's gin. I suppose this may be the most popular gin in the world. Gordon's. They ran an advertising campaign some years ago which tried to rename the ordering of a gin and tonic to the ordering of a Gordon's and tonic. I don't think it was very successful, but let's give it a try. Yeah, a little bit less on the nose with this one. I would say that's a lot less interesting than the previous two, than the Tanqueray and the Bombay. It's just a lot less interesting, I think. Interesting. It doesn't feel as aggressive. It feels less aggressive alcohol-wise than the other two as well. Okay. Right, what should we try next? Let's go on to the fruit-flavoured drinks. By the way, I realised that at some point that I've probably already passed, my palate's going to be worth nothing. But I don't know anything about tasting gin anyway, so I'm just telling you what I think, that's all. Bit of fun. Okay, let's try these. Here we have a Brockman's, an Opea, a Gordon's Premium Pink, and Needle Gin from the Black Forest. So I'll start with the Needle Gin from the Black Forest. Somebody's drunk some of this, but I've got no idea who. I don't think it was me. Yeah, let's see how it tastes. Right, well, that's a surprise. I did expect it to be coloured black somehow because of the bottle. But let's have a taste. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, that's disgusting. The production of gin in the Black Forest, southern Germany. Single batch, doesn't say anything about the hand-picked botanicals, local hand-picked botanicals, such as spruce needles. Well, Okay, well, good luck to you. I don't think I'll be drinking much of you. Oh, that was not pretty at all. Let's try the Gordon's Pink Gin. Well, that's immediately fruity. Carol's a really big fan of this at the moment, and she just puts a dash of soda in there with some fruit. But you can smell the fruit immediately. It's very sweet, quite tasty. What's it say? It's meant to. I mean, I'm tasting blackberries and strawberries and oranges. They say raspberry and strawberry and the tang of red currant. Very nice. 1 part gin with 3 parts tonic water. Yeah, I'm sure that's how you meant to drink it. Okay, this one is called Brockman's. This has become Carol's, that's my wife, Carol's favourite gin at the moment. There's not much left. She probably won't thank me for wasting some in this cavalier fashion. Oops, sorry, Carol. That's Brockman's. See, I already know this is a fruity one, but I can taste it. I can smell it rather. A unique blend of botanicals with subtle notes of berry give an intensely smooth taste in this beautifully made gin. Yeah, I get that. I wonder what the difference with, I mean, for example, if you're having a mixer with your drink, what's the difference between having a flavoured gin and a flavoured vodka, for example? Well, I think that what's becoming clear to me is that vodka's a very neutral flavour. Some of the more premium ones, I do definitely get some good flavour from them. But in the main, vodka's fairly flavourless, but gin is not. You know, and when you add different flavours to it, you do definitely get a different drink. So this one's called Opea. Again, that's a favourite. I really like this one as well. This is kind of meant to be a spiced gin. It's called Opea Spices of the Orient. Yeah, and immediately you get a different fragrance from this one. Oh, yeah. That's like a kick in the teeth taste-wise. Yeah, it's very different. It's full of spice. I'm getting tanginess of fruit, but I'm also getting something more bitter, like the spices you would cook with. Like, not quite a chili hit, but definitely a strong spice flavour. Or maybe that's the marketing working on me. They describe it as a London dry gin. What do they say they flavour it with? Well, there you go. So hand-picked botanicals such as cubebs, cardamom and telecherry pepper, sourced from along the ancient spice route. Okay. All right, that's the second 4 done. Oh, still on my feet. Alrighty, so I'm in the second half of the taste test now. This gin is by Masons and it's called Grapefruit and Mandarin. Well, I don't need any further information to tell me what I ought to be tasting in it. So let's just pour a little. Oh, tally-ho, bottoms up. Wow. Well, I really expected that to be sweet. And of course, I've had a lot of gin on my tongue. I've not drunk that much, the sips, but I've had a lot of gin on my tongue. So I don't know if that's muting it, but I don't get to grapefruit and mandarin from this taste. Maybe a little mandarin, maybe a little. Okay, next one. Rhubarb from Warner's. 1/3 of this bottle is real rhubarb juice. That's interesting. Which is especially interesting considering that it's still 40% volume in terms of strength. So, done some magic to make that happen. Okay. Is anybody a fan of rhubarb in general? I don't think so. Oh, my word. Oh, no, thank you. No, thank you. It's a strong taste of something. I don't know if I can classify it as rhubarb. Rhubarb is a really bitter, unless it's carefully prepared. I rarely have it, unless it's carefully prepared. Has a really bitter flavour. They've managed to retain all of the bitter and not much of anything else really, so I'm not a fan. Okay, lemongrass and ginger ale. Of course, we're now on to the Whitley gin. I think Whitley Neal is probably one of the beneficiaries of the Renaissance in gin because they seem to be producing so many different types. We've got quite a few to taste here. I think 6 remaining gins are all from the same brand. But they look like they produce some really interesting flavour combinations, so let's give it a shot. This one is lemongrass and ginger, of all things. Okay, lemongrass and ginger. That's lovely. Oh yeah, that's lovely. That's almost liqueur-like in its taste and flavour. I wonder, it'll be interesting to see actually, there are 6 gins, including that one, 5 gins remaining. And I wonder if that's how Whitley Neal do it. I've only had them with mixers, most of us probably have. That's really almost liqueur-like in flavour. It's got a lovely sweetness to it. Yeah, that's really nice. Okay, Whitley Neal again. This is Parma Violet. A lot of people of my age have fond memories of a sweet called Parma Violet from our childhoods. And I'm hoping that this will take me back to those heady days in the sunshine of my youth. Parma Violet. I'm not even sure I know where Parma Violet comes from as a flavour. Let's see. Cheers. Oh yeah, straight away. That is exactly the memory that I have from my childhood, that flavour, albeit mixed with a lot of alcohol. That's quite a bit more aggressive than this one. This was very sweet. This one's not quite as sweet, but Parma Violet, very nice. Okay, 4 left. Well, we're getting there now. We're going to move on to our last 4. So we've got quince, pink grapefruit, raspberry, and blood orange. So a nice fruity finish. Let's begin with the quince. I mentioned this in the intro, actually. Does anybody want quince gin? I have had this before with tonic, and I think it's delicious with tonic. So let's see what it's like without. Chin chin. Oh my goodness. That's a mixing drink, not a sipping drink. Wow. Well, if that flavour is quince, it really packs a punch. That's lovely. Lovely mixed. Okay, pink grapefruit. Cheers. Does what it says on the tin. I'm not sure about the grapefruit. Just tastes like a light spirit to me. It says exceptional quality with a smooth citrus taste of the Mediterranean. I'm not getting that. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll put that down there. One of the things I've noticed about all of these gins is this one is blood orange, again from Whitley Neal. I've noticed that they don't seem to have much on the nose by the way of fragrance. It's not a great deal going on. I don't know why that is. Again, perhaps I just don't have the nose for it. I'm sure there is a difference in aroma between them, but it's really on the tongue that you notice the difference. So, blood orange. Oh, 100% can taste the orange in that. Oh wow, that's really made my mouth water. Oh my goodness. Oh my word. Yeah. Okay, and finally, raspberry gin. Okay, I can't say I'm sorry this is over. Well, there's ironically, on this one, I can really smell something on the nose. I can smell the raspberry. Wow. Well, what have I learned? I've learned that tasting 16 gins is a lot. That tasting gin probably isn't done this way. I've learned that a lot of them smelled the same and that a good number of them aren't really suitable for drinking without a mixer. So I probably won't go down that route again, perhaps with the exception of this lemongrass and ginger gin. That was absolutely delicious to drink without anything else in it. I really enjoyed it. And I think if I had a decent sized measure and I could sit there for an hour and happily sip away at one of those, that was lovely. This one's quite a bit of a sipper as well. This had enough flavour, the premium pink gin from Gordon's. But in the main, these are certainly intended for mixing and should probably not be drunk. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? What I'm thinking is, what is the average of gin? What if I took all of these remainders and put them into one glass? I wonder what that would taste like. I'm totally going to do that, 100%. Let's get to it. Okay, the average of 16 gins. What will that taste like? Well, here's to you. It tastes like quince gin. Well, I'll tell you what I need after that marathon drinking session. I need a nice civilised martini. Now, the martini is possibly my favourite cocktail. One of the great things about it is it's so simple to make, but it looks beautifully elegant when it's finished. So we start with a classic martini glass. You could use that. You could use a coupe glass just as easily. One of these. They both work equally well, but I rather like the classic look. So begin with this, and the first thing we're going to do is cool the glass. The way to do that is simply to add some ice to the glass, like so. and add water. And we can just leave this to the side now and allow it to cool while we prepare the rest of the drink. Our ingredients for this cocktail, let's just get my measuring jug, are gin, and if you've stayed with me all the way to the end, you probably already know my go-to gin is the Bombay Sapphire. So we'll begin with that, and we're going to need something to mix the drink in. Now, of course, everybody's heard of a dry martini shaken, not stirred on TV and in film from James Bond in the main. The reality is that I don't like a shaken martini. If you can imagine what's happening inside the vessel when you're smashing this ice back and forth, here's a shaker. The shaker is made of two parts, but when you put them together, this is a Boston shaker. When you put them together, they're actually, see how long it is? So you're smashing the ice from end to end. I don't really like that. It breaks up the ice. Some say it dilutes the ice. Dilutes the drink too much as well because of all that little bits of broken ice. I'm going to use a Galoni, which is this device here. It's just a big old jug. You could use any big old jug to do this, but the key is to use lots of ice. So we're going to add lots of ice to our, just rearrange the decks a bit here. Add lots of ice first. Lots and lots and lots of ice, and then we're going to just simply measure our two ingredients into it. The first thing, I'll grab the second one now actually, this is a vermouth. So we're going to start with the gin. So I've got my Bombay Sapphire here, and in my measuring jug here I'm just going to count out 2 ounces, which is about 60 millilitres, or a large one if you're in the UK. So I'll just measure that out now. That's 2 ounces of Bombay Sapphire, and just pour it straight into the ice like that. Next, we put in our vermouth. Now the ratio is 4:1, so 4 gin to 1 vermouth. Some of you, by the way, are probably thinking, ooh, I don't want to make a martini out of gin. I would have a vodka martini. Well, that's up to you. I much prefer a gin martini. It's the classic one, so maybe I'm just a little bit old-fashioned. For 4 parts of gin, I put 2 ounces in. So for the vermouth, I simply put in half an ounce. And you'll notice this is dry vermouth or vermouth. That's why it's a dry martini. If it was sweet vermouth, it would be a sweet martini, etc. So we'll just measure out half here. So half, it's not much at all. Pop that in there as well. And now we simply stir. Here I have a bar spoon. Bar spoons are really useful because they're very, very long. And all we're going to do is stir. And we're going to stir for quite a while. Now, this is much, much gentler of an action than the shaking alternative. And it's going to break less of the ice, remember. Because what I want at the end is a nice crystal clear drink. Have you ever had ice melt in a glass that you know, when you make ice in the fridge, for example, and the ice melts in the glass? There's sometimes deposits at the bottom, isn't there? We don't want any of that. We're just going to gently stir it for quite a while. It's quite civilised, isn't it? Especially considering the alternative. Okay, that'll do. Now remember, I've had my glass cooling for some time while that's been making. And so we're just going to get rid of the ice and the water now. And what I should be left with is a nice layer of condensation on the glass. Yeah, that looks pretty good, doesn't it? This is a Hawthorn strainer. There are many types of strainer. This one's a Hawthorn, very suitable for this particular pour. This is a julep strainer. I sometimes use that for drinks. And sometimes a dry martini will be double strained. So they would take this Hawthorn, but also have like a very fine sieve underneath. And the purpose of that is to keep out as much of the smashed ice as possible. But I don't find that extra level necessary. I'm just going to pour this now. Look how lovely and clear that is. Gorgeous. Looks inviting already, but we have a final flourish. And we're just going to add a couple of olives to the drink just to finish it off. So I'll get my cocktail stick and my olives. This looks absolutely delicious, so I think we're going to go with 3 olives. Just pop those in there. And there you have it. A gin dry martini. What you could do at this point, if you wanted to, is you see my olives here are in a brine, a juice. Well, what you could do is take your bar spoon and measure out a few spoons of the olive juice into the drink. And that would become a dirty martini. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but I quite like a dirty martini. But not today. Should we see how it tastes? Delicious. During the so that's almost neat gin, isn't it? And during the tasting, I certainly noticed how aggressive the alcohol is in many of these gins. Making the drink in this way, the ice adds a little dilution. The vermouth takes down the aggressiveness of the gin. And just that lovely combination, it's cold, just a delicious drink. Okay. Thanks for watching Silica Valley. I'll see you next time.
Driving rain, found John's out hitting on the liquor again. It wasn't too late, about 10:30 when he let loose for the cat trick. Then it was Sunday. Well, the morning came in morning when he tried to make me pay the rent. Said I ain't got no money if you cannot pay me away with these dancing shoes. Thought I was kidding.